Join me live on YouTube tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, where we will have a live Q&A stream where you can ask me any questions about anything and everything. And now, on with our feature presentation. When there's a player that's in trade talks in any sport, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, hockey, soccer, or anything along those lines, what's one thing that you never do if you're the team trying to trade said player away, and you pretty much have a deal in place to trade that player? You do not play said player. Too much can go wrong, and the whole trade can be called off just like that. If you want to trade a player, you've got the deal just about ready to go, you decide to try and get one final game out of the player, and then said player tears his ACL, the whole trade is called off, and you either wind up with nothing, or you wind up with a trade package that is of a significantly lesser value than what it would have been before. Playing players right as you're about to trade them, and right as the rumor mill is heating up, is an absolute recipe for disaster most of the time, where not a whole lot of good can come out of it. However, this is one of those bizarre situations where a team did just that, and it led to the trade getting called off. Not because the player got hurt, but because the team realized, holy crap, this guy is actually good. Why are we even trading him away in the first place? This player right here that you've been watching this whole time is Green Bay Packers running back Donny Anderson. And in 1969, he was this close to being shipped out of Green Bay and to the Big Apple, as the Packers were getting ready to say goodbye to their former first-round pick and a part of the famed $1 million backfield. And then, the team changed its mind at the very last second, thanks to a bizarre situation that would probably never happen again. Because this is the story behind Donny Anderson, the proposed trade in 1969 between the Green Bay Packers and the New York Giants, and what might just be, considering the circumstances, the strangest failed trade of the entire 1969 NFL season. Before I talk about the actual trade proposal itself and what was offered, as well as why the whole trade got called off at the last second, we need some context to understand how Anderson was doing prior to the trade, and why the Giants were even interested in his services. The year is 1968, and Donny Anderson, the former first-round pick out of Texas Tech from the 1965 NFL Draft, is one of the best running backs in football. Under head coach Vince Lombardi over the previous few seasons, such as 1967, the Packers didn't really have an established number one running back, as even though they had the second-best rushing offense in football and had a lot of really good players, it was a pretty even distribution in terms of who got the rock, including Ben Wilson, Donny Anderson, Elijah Pitts, and Jim Grabowski, who you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But in 1968, when head coach Phil Bengtson came into the fold, he decided to make Anderson the feature back, giving him the bulk of the carries and having him start every single game for the team. And man, did Anderson deliver, as he made the Pro Bowl that season by having over 1,000 yards from scrimmage and by averaging over 4.5 yards per carry. Anderson found the end zone 6 times, including twice during the team's 27-7 victory over Washington, in a game that I talked about a while ago. So if you want to learn more about that game, you can do so by clicking the card in the upper right corner. He finished the season 7th in the league in yards from scrimmage and in rushing touchdowns, and finished inside the top 5 in yards per carry. The Packers may have taken a step back in 1968 with Lombardi no longer at the helm, but you could not blame Anderson for that whatsoever, as he did his part, and then some. Honestly, Anderson had a legitimate case for being one of the top 5 running backs in all of the NFL that season, as if you had Leroy Kelly, Gale Sayers, and Don Perkins in your top 3, there was definitely some debate for the number 4 and the number 5 spot, and Anderson was right in there based on his performance and based on his overall production. So what could Anderson do for an encore in 1969? Well, not a whole lot, because at the start of the season, Packers head coach Phil Bengtson just decided not to play him at all. Part of it was a poor preseason, where through the first 3 games of the exhibition season, back when it actually meant something, Anderson was averaging under 2 yards per carry. Part of it was an injury concern, as he was dealing with a minor problem with his ribs, though it wasn't serious enough where he couldn't play through it, seeing as he also appeared as the team's punter, and he sporadically got some carries. However, through the first half of 1969, it seemed as though Donny Anderson, as in a top 5 running back in the NFL the year before, was mysteriously no longer in Green Bay's plans, with guys like 9th-round rookie Dave Hampton and 30-year man Travis Williams, who only had 33 carries in 1968 and averaged under 2 yards per carry while never finding the end zone, getting reps ahead of him. Again, it was kind of a mystery why Anderson, after playing so well the previous year and being the team's first-round pick from a few years ago, was just all of a sudden not playing, as through the first 5 weeks of the season, he had 2 carries for 2 yards, and that was it. But whatever the case, Anderson was fuming about this, and understandably so. It seemed like every bridge between he and Phil Bankston was burnt at this point, especially after Bankston, for some bizarre reason, tried to switch Anderson's position from running back to flanker, or wide receiver, right before the year started. Again, the move to flanker didn't seem to make a lot of sense. As Bankston said, we had to see what other people could do. There's no question that Donny came through for us last season. We need some more experience at flanker. So let me get this straight. You said that Donny was great for you last year at running back, and you need more experience at flanker. So you decided to get that experience by converting a running back to that position, thereby creating another need? How does that make sense? It's like if the Browns this year decided they needed help at wide receiver, so they converted Nick Chubb. It's like if I say I want to hire a professor with more experience, so I go and hire the 70-year-old plumber that's working in the school district. Like, I'm getting someone with more experience for sure, but I'm not exactly solving the problem. There's nothing that indicates that the plumber can teach, and now, guess what? I need to find a new plumber. Anyways, Anderson was pretty much done in Green Bay. After the opening week of the season, where Anderson did not touch the ball once outside of punts, Anderson was fuming, despite the fact that the Packers beat the Bears 17-0. Said Anderson, "I don't know why they didn't play me. It wasn't discussed before the game, but I thought I would play, and I was ready to play." He then added, "Maybe they were just trying to let my ribs heal up a little better. I've been hurt for about 5 weeks, but I played since then. You can't just kick a man who's played in the Pro Bowl and put him down. I'll try to keep a good attitude and hang tight, but I know I can play. I realize there are other running backs here, but I can play for somebody. I know that. If they're not going to play you, you might as well hang it up or move on." And after the game, Bankston didn't really give any insight as to why Anderson didn't play, in a press conference that Bill Belichick would be proud of. It was a 4-question press conference. For the first question, a reporter asked, "Any reason Anderson didn't get into the game?" Bankston responded by saying, "No." For the second question, a reporter asked, "Could he have played?" Bankston responded by saying, "Yes." For the third question, a reporter asked, "Will he play against San Francisco next Sunday?" Bankston responded by saying, "Sure." For the fourth and final question, a reporter asked, "Any comment on what Anderson said?" Bankston responded by saying, "No." No, yes, sure, and no. Marshawn Lynch literally uttered more words at his iconic Super Bowl press conference than Bankston did. 4 questions and 3 unique words, or under 1 unique word per question. I'm legitimately impressed. By this point, though, it was clear. Anderson was done. Bankston was done for some reason, and Anderson was going to be on his way out and would be trade bait for some team by the trade deadline at the end of October. And that team? None other than the New York Giants. the Giants needed help in their running game badly. In 3 of their first 5 games, the team had under 90 yards rushing, which was incredibly uncommon back in 1969, when teams routinely put up 100 yards per game in their sleep. For some perspective, the average team in 1969 averaged 122 yards per game, and the Giants, over their first 5 games, were well under that mark 4 times, and were more than 30 yards under that mark 3 times. Tucker Frederickson, the team's first-round pick from 1965, was a very good player when healthy. He was the first overall pick in that draft for a reason. But he was becoming an injury nightmare who could not stay healthy, seeing as the injury sidelining him now was a chip bone in his ankle, and who had no breakaway speed at this point, being a shell of himself. Joe Morrison was a very consistent player for the Giants for a long period of time, but by 1969, he was 32 years old, and he was past his prime by a considerable amount. After averaging 9.3 yards per touch over the past 5 seasons, that number was down by nearly 3 yards per touch in 1969. The Giants were lacking something offensively, because if you've got to give significant playing time to Randy freaking Mini-Ear, as in a running back who never had a season at that point with more than 2.8 yards per carry, then oh man, you're in trouble. And with that in mind, the Giants were looking at acquiring the man that you've been watching this whole time. None other than disgruntled Packers running back, Donny Anderson. The move made a ton of sense. The Giants needed a great running back who was on the younger side of things, and Anderson fit that bill. The Packers weren't playing him, so you can upgrade at another position. Heck, you can get that veteran wide receiver in the trade that you've been desperately craving by acquiring Homer Jones, a player who you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. And with that, the Giants and Packers got to work, with rumors flying that this trade was going to be a done deal. It might have been the worst kept secret in football at the time. Donny Anderson was going to the Giants in exchange for running back Ernie Coy and wide receiver Homer Jones. In fact, one rumor was so prevalent that it was the talk of Wall Street, as a private wire carried a dispatch that announced the trade. The Packers denied that such a thing ever happened, and said that no trade was done. But oddly enough, the Giants never outright denied it. The New York Daily News said that there was a better than 50-50 chance that this trade was going to happen, and the odds increased even more when head coach Alex Webster was asked about the Giants acquiring Anderson. And Webster, instead of denying it and playing it off, said, "He would be a big lift for us, wouldn't he?" Which, side note, I have to interject here, because holy cow, this would be a massive tampering violation if it were to happen today. This is a giant no-no. A coach saying that, yeah, we're looking to upgrade the running back position, we haven't ruled out anything yet in terms of trades, and we're always looking to improve there, that's one thing. No problem there. No problem saying you haven't ruled anything out. But for a coach to say explicitly about a player, in this case Donny Anderson, yeah, he would help here a lot, don't you think? He would get a lot of playing time here. When he's not getting playing time in Green Bay, that's the reason he wants out of Green Bay, and when he's still under a contract with the Packers, I can't even imagine the fines that the Giants and head coach Alex Webster would rack up if this were to happen today in 2023. Anyways, this rumor was so persistent, especially after Webster basically confirmed that this was going to happen, that one newspaper in Green Bay posted a picture of Homer Jones and Ernie Coy, as in, the two men projected to be included in the deal for Anderson, and ran the caption, "We'll be there by next Tuesday." So you'd figure that this would be a done deal, right? Donny Anderson to New York, and Homer Jones and Ernie Coy to Green Bay. The Giants get their running back that they need, and the Packers get their veteran wide receiver that they crave so much that they tried to convert a running back to that position for some reason. However, the Packers, after running back Travis Williams suffered an eye injury, decided, wait a second, time out. Before we make this trade, because Williams is hurt and won't be able to suit up, let's play Anderson and give him some reps. We'll make the trade after this is done, but we actually have a reason to play Anderson for this game at running back. So let's do that. Let's try to win this game, and then we'll do business. Again, seems like a pretty risky game plan. You've got a running back that you're never going to play again after this week, since Williams' eye injury is nothing serious in the long term. You've got a chance to acquire Homer Jones, a man who's had over 1,000 yards receiving in each of the past 3 seasons, has made the Pro Bowl in each of the last 2 seasons, and is 2 years removed from setting the Giants' franchise record for most receiving touchdowns in a season. And you're going to risk something happening to Anderson and risk the entire trade being called off? Really? Well, sure enough, the Packers played Anderson during this game right here against the Atlanta Falcons, needing a win to keep pace with the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions for first place in the Central Division, at a time where only the division winner made it to the playoffs. And that meant that they needed a strong outing from the man that they exiled all season, seeing as he had just 2 carries, which was none other than Donny Anderson. As for what Anderson did, he made the Packers question everything they knew. Because during this game, as you can tell from the highlights, Phil Bengston and company realized, wait a second, why the heck did we send this guy to the bench in the first place? Donny Anderson can play. Because during this game, which the Packers won by a final score of 28-10, Anderson played one of the best games of his pro football career. He finished the game with 114 rushing yards on over 6.3 yards per carry, and actually set a career high at the time for most rushing yards he had in a game. On top of that, he set the tone for the entire contest by scoring the opening points of the game, as he scored on a 16-yard touchdown in the first quarter to give the Packers a 7-0 lead, which the team would never relinquish. And even head coach Phil Bengston had to applaud the performance, saying, "We started Anderson because of his experience. He played an excellent game, although we had to have the blocking to do it. He especially made a very good move cutting back on that touchdown run. A runner has several options in that situation, and he reacted very well." And Anderson himself was pleased that he finally got to play, and played well at that, saying, "I have to feel good. Naturally, it's nice to play, and the good Lord was with me, I guess." And after the game, the asking price for Anderson shot up. It wasn't just Homer Jones and Ernie Coy anymore that the Packers wanted. They wanted some draft picks too, which the Giants were not willing to part with. The Packers realized that Anderson could play, and probably was the best running back on the team, which I'm not sure why it took them this long to come to this revelation, considering how well he played in 1968, but regardless, Anderson was off the trading block. The proposed trade with the Giants? It fell through. If the Giants were going to improve their running game, they would have to do it elsewhere, which led to them pulling the trigger at the last minute on a trade for Atlanta Falcons running back Junior Coffey. Anderson was not just going to remain in Green Bay, but he was going to start not just 7 more games the rest of the season, but every game the following year in 1970, and the year after that in 1971, when in both of those years, he played a critical part in Green Bay's offense and picked up over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. Anderson played in the NFL all the way until 1974. So to play a decade in the NFL for a running back? Not too shabby if I do say so myself. As for what would have happened if the trade went through between these 2 teams behind me, the Giants and the Packers, and what the Packers would have received, as I mentioned before, they would have gotten running back Ernie Coy and wide receiver Homer Jones. Neither of those guys played in the NFL after the 1970 season. Coy had 2 rushes for 5 yards in 1970, and Jones only had 10 catches. So I think it's safe to say that when it came to who won this failed trade, the Packers definitely won by holding on to Donny Anderson. We've seen trades get called off for a ton of reasons. A player enacts a no-trade clause. A player fails a physical. A player throws a fit. Heck, a fax machine malfunctions. But this is up there with one of the strangest ones. where the team had the framework for the deal in place and where the trade was going to go through. And then, another player got injured, forcing the player in the trade to finally play, and play so well that the team realized the error of its ways and was wondering why the heck they were even trading the man away in the first place. Donny Anderson would remain a Packer for quite some time after that, and Packer fans were pretty happy about that considering how well he played. Because after watching Donny Anderson finally play in 1969, when it came to trading away Anderson, the Packers told the Giants to pack it up and go home. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.